What happens when one of the world's most controversial royals sits across from daytime television's most fearless host? You won't believe what unfolds when Prince Harry's carefully crafted public image completely crumbles in front of millions of viewers, leading to the most explosive celebrity meltdown ever captured on live television. Before we get into this incredible story, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below, because you're not going to believe what unfolds when Jennifer Hudson refuses to let this royal play victim on her stage. The atmosphere in Studio 6B was electric last night, as Jennifer Hudson prepared for what everyone expected to be another promotional appearance for Prince Harry's latest memoir revelations. The Duke of Sussex had been making his rounds through the media circuit, carefully controlling his narrative about royal life, his struggles with the press, and his ongoing legal battles. But Jennifer Hudson isn't just any host. She's built her reputation on asking the questions other interviewers are too intimidated to touch. As the cameras rolled and the audience settled into their seats, Jennifer's opening was characteristically warm, but with that subtle edge her regular viewers know so well. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Prince Harry," she announced, her smile bright, but her eyes already sharp, with the kind of intensity that suggested this wouldn't be the softball interview the Duke's handlers had probably negotiated for. Prince Harry walked onto the stage with that familiar awkward wave, his usual nervous energy masked by years of media training. He settled into the guest chair, adjusting his jacket and offering that practiced smile that had become his trademark during this endless publicity tour. The initial pleasantries flowed exactly as expected. Jennifer complimented his recent charity work. He thanked her for having him on the show, and for the first few minutes, everything seemed perfectly choreographed. But Jennifer Hudson didn't become one of television's most respected hosts by playing it safe. As soon as the conversation turned to his book and the revelations about his family, her questions began to take on a sharper edge. "You've made some pretty serious accusations about your father and stepmother in this book," she began, leaning slightly forward in that way that signals to viewers that the real interview is about to begin. "But I have to ask, don't you think there's something deeply problematic about a grown man publicly airing his family's private business for profit?" The question hung in the air like a loaded weapon. Prince Harry's media-trained smile flickered for just a moment, replaced by something harder, more defensive. "Well, Jennifer, I think you're oversimplifying a very complex situation," he replied, his voice carrying that particular tone of condescension that members of the royal family seem to perfect from birth. "This isn't about profit, it's about truth. It's about accountability, and it's about making sure that what happened to my mother doesn't happen to anyone else." Jennifer's eyebrows raised slightly, a subtle signal to anyone who knew her interviewing style that she wasn't buying what he was selling. "Accountability," she repeated, her voice flat with skepticism. "So holding your family accountable means writing a book where you detail private conversations, reveal personal struggles of family members, and essentially throw everyone under the bus while positioning yourself as the perpetual victim?" The tension in the studio shifted noticeably. The audience, who had been politely quiet during the opening pleasantries, seemed to lean forward collectively. This wasn't going according to script, and everyone could feel it. Prince Harry's jaw tightened, his hands gripping the armrests of his chair with just enough force to suggest that his carefully maintained composure was beginning to crack. "I don't think you understand the situation I was in," he said, his voice taking on that familiar whiny quality that had become increasingly present in his recent interviews. "You don't understand what it's like to grow up in that institution, to be constantly manipulated, to watch your wife be torn apart by the same forces that killed your mother." Jennifer Hudson's expression remained perfectly neutral, but there was something in her eyes that suggested she was just getting started. "Help me understand then," she said, her voice deceptively calm, "because from where I'm sitting, it looks like a privileged man who's never had to worry about paying rent, never had to choose between buying groceries or medicine, never had to work a real job in his life. is complaining about how hard his incredibly privileged life has been, while simultaneously profiting off that same privilege he claims to despise. The words landed like physical blows. Prince Harry's face flushed red, and for the first time since walking onto the stage, his media training seemed to completely abandon him. "You have no idea what you're talking about," he snapped, his voice rising slightly. "You think privilege means it doesn't hurt when your own family throws you to the wolves? You think money makes it okay when they refuse to protect your wife from racist attacks?" But Jennifer wasn't backing down. If anything, she was just warming up. "I think privilege means you had options that 99% of people in abusive situations don't have," she fired back. "You could have walked away quietly. You could have built a life without constantly dragging your family through the mud in public. You could have found ways to help people without making yourself the center of every conversation about royal reform." The studio had gone completely silent, except for the hum of the cameras and lights. This was no longer an interview. It was becoming something much more raw and confrontational. Prince Harry's hands were now visibly shaking, with what appeared to be barely controlled anger, his carefully constructed public persona beginning to crack under the pressure of someone finally pushing back against his narrative. "You're twisting everything I'm saying," he said, his voice now carrying a petulant edge that made him sound more like a frustrated teenager than a grown man. "This isn't about me wanting attention. This is about protecting my family, about making sure the institution that destroyed my mother doesn't destroy my wife and children too." Jennifer leaned back in her chair, her expression shifting to something that could only be described as withering skepticism. "Protecting your family," she repeated slowly, as if tasting the words. "By writing tell-all books, doing interview tours, making Netflix documentaries, and turning your family drama into a multi-million-dollar media empire? That's protection?" And that's when something in Prince Harry's eyes changed completely, signaling that this confrontation was about to reach a whole new level of explosive. The shift was immediate and unmistakable. Gone was any pretense of the charming, vulnerable prince who had walked onto the stage just minutes earlier. In its place sat someone who looked genuinely unhinged, his face contorting with a mixture of rage and disbelief that anyone would dare challenge his carefully constructed narrative so directly. The transformation was so dramatic that several audience members visibly recoiled in their seats. "Are you fucking kidding me right now?" Prince Harry exploded, his voice echoing through the stunned studio. The expletive hung in the air like a bomb had gone off, and you could practically hear the collective gasp from the audience. "You sit there in your little chair, judging me, when you have absolutely no clue what it's like to have your entire life scrutinized, to have every move you make twisted into some kind of tabloid headline." Jennifer Hudson didn't even blink. If anything, his outburst seemed to energize her, like a predator that had finally gotten her prey exactly where she wanted them. "Oh, I'm sorry," she said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "Did I strike a nerve? Because, from where I'm sitting, it sounds like you just proved my point perfectly. The moment someone challenges your victim story, you lose your damn mind and start cursing on live television." The studio crew was frantically signaling to each other, clearly unsure whether to cut to commercial or let this train wreck continue to unfold. But Jennifer Hudson was in complete control, and she had no intention of letting Prince Harry off the hook now that she had him exactly where she wanted him. "You want to talk about scrutiny?" she continued, her voice rising with conviction. "Let's talk about scrutiny. You think you're the only person who's ever had their life picked apart by the media? You think you're the only one who's ever faced criticism or had lies told about them? The difference is, most people don't have the luxury of writing multi-million-dollar books to cry about it." Prince Harry was now completely unraveled, his hands gesturing wildly as he spoke. "You don't understand the pressure, the constant attacks, the way they turned my own family against me," he shouted, spittle actually flying from his mouth in his rage. "They made me out to be the villain when all I ever tried to do was protect the people I love. Protect them? Jennifer shot back, her voice cutting through his hysteria like a blade. You call writing intimate details about your brother's private conversations protection? You call revealing your father's personal struggles protection? You call dragging your stepmother through the mud in front of the entire world protection? The audience was completely silent now, watching this verbal bloodbath unfold with the kind of horrified fascination usually reserved for natural disasters. Some people were actually covering their mouths in shock, unable to believe what they were witnessing. Prince Harry's voice cracked as he screamed back, "They left me no choice. They hung me out to dry. They refused to defend my wife against racist attacks. They made it clear that I would never be anything more than the spare." His face was now completely red, veins visibly bulging in his forehead, as years of suppressed rage came pouring out in the most public meltdown in royal history. But Jennifer Hudson was relentless, sensing blood in the water. "So, your solution was to become exactly what they said you were?" she demanded. "A bitter, entitled, attention-seeking drama queen who can't handle not being the center of attention, because that's exactly what you're proving right now with this pathetic display." The words hit Prince Harry like physical blows, and for a moment, he actually looked stunned into silence. His mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water, as if he couldn't quite process that someone had finally said what millions of people had been thinking, but were too polite or too intimidated to voice. "How dare you?" he finally whispered, his voice trembling with barely contained fury. "How fucking dare you sit there and judge me when you know nothing about what I've been through, what my family has put me through, what the institution has done to destroy everything I care about?" Jennifer leaned forward, her eyes blazing with the kind of righteous anger that comes from finally confronting someone who desperately needed to be called out. "I dare, because someone needs to tell you the truth," she said, her voice steady, but filled with conviction. "Someone needs to tell you that the world is tired of your constant whining, tired of your endless victim complex, tired of watching you destroy your own family for publicity and profit." The studio felt like a pressure cooker about to explode. Prince Harry was now standing halfway out of his chair, his body language suggesting he was either going to storm off or completely lose what little remained of his composure. The camera operators were zooming in, capturing every twitch, every expression, every moment of this historic meltdown. "You want to know what I think?" Jennifer continued, pressing her advantage as Prince Harry teetered on the edge of complete breakdown. "I think you're exactly what your family always said you were. A spoiled, selfish child who throws tantrums when he doesn't get his way. And instead of growing up and taking responsibility for your choices, you've turned your family trauma into a business model." Prince Harry's breathing was now visibly labored, his chest heaving as he struggled to maintain even a shred of dignity. But Jennifer Hudson wasn't done with him yet, and what came next would push him completely over the edge. "You know what the real tragedy is here, Harry?" Jennifer said, her voice taking on an almost pitying tone that was somehow more devastating than her previous attacks. "Your mother would be absolutely ashamed of what you've become. Diana spent her life trying to protect her sons from becoming bitter, vindictive people, and you've turned yourself into exactly the kind of person she fought against." The mention of his mother was the final straw. Prince Harry's face went completely white, then flushed deep red as if he'd been slapped. His entire body began to shake with rage, and when he spoke, his voice was barely recognizable, high-pitched, cracking with emotion, and filled with a venom that shocked even Jennifer Hudson. "Don't you fucking dare bring my mother into this," he screamed, spittle flying from his mouth as he completely lost control. "Don't you dare speak her name when you know nothing about her, nothing about what she stood for, nothing about what she would have wanted for me and my family." But Jennifer Hudson had spent years dealing with difficult celebrities, and she wasn't about to be intimidated by a royal tantrum. If anything, his reaction confirmed everything she'd been building toward. "I know she wouldn't have wanted her son to become a professional victim who profits off family trauma," she shot back, without missing a beat. I know she wouldn't have wanted you to spend your life complaining about the very institution that gave you every advantage you've ever had. Prince Harry was now fully standing, his chair pushed back so hard it nearly toppled over. His hands were clenched into fists at his sides, and for a terrifying moment, it looked like he might actually become physically violent. The studio security team, who had been watching nervously from the wings, began moving closer to the stage area. "You have no right!" he shrieked, his voice breaking like an adolescent boy's. "You have no right to judge me, to psychoanalyze me, to sit there and pretend you understand anything about my life or my choices. I came here in good faith to have a conversation, and you've turned this into some kind of ambush." Jennifer Hudson stood up as well, matching his energy, but maintaining her composure in a way that made his breakdown look even more pathetic by comparison. "Good faith?" she laughed, the sound cold and mocking. "You came here to peddle the same victim narrative you've been selling for years, expecting me to nod along and ask softball questions while you trash your family for the millionth time. Well, surprise. Some of us aren't buying what you're selling anymore." The audience was completely transfixed, phones out recording what would undoubtedly become the most viral celebrity meltdown in television history. This wasn't just entertainment anymore. This was a psychological breakdown happening in real time, and everyone could sense they were witnessing something that would be talked about for years to come. Prince Harry began pacing behind his chair like a caged animal, his movements erratic and uncontrolled. "This is bullshit!" he shouted, his voice echoing through the studio. "This is exactly the kind of attack that drove me and my wife out of the country in the first place. You're all the same. You pretend to care about mental health and trauma until it's convenient to tear someone down for ratings. Mental health?" Jennifer's voice rose with genuine anger now. "Don't you dare hide behind mental health when millions of people are struggling with real problems. Poverty, addiction, abuse, while you cry about your privileged life in million-dollar mansions. You want to talk about mental health? Stop making it harder for people with real issues to be taken seriously with your constant performative victimhood." That was it. Prince Harry completely snapped. He picked up the water glass from the table next to his chair and hurled it across the stage, where it shattered against the backdrop with a crash that made several audience members scream. The studio erupted in chaos as security rushed forward, but Prince Harry was already moving toward the exit. "Fuck this!" he screamed over his shoulder as he stormed off the stage, his microphone still clipped to his jacket and picking up every word. "Fuck this show, fuck this network, and fuck all of you. You want a villain so badly? Fine. I'll give you a fucking villain." As he reached the edge of the stage, he turned back one final time, his face contorted with rage and humiliation. "You have no idea what you've just done," he snarled at Jennifer Hudson, who stood calmly in the center of the chaos, completely unfazed by his meltdown. "No idea at all." Jennifer Hudson waited until he was completely off the stage before turning to face the cameras directly, her composure returning as if nothing had happened. The studio was still buzzing with shocked murmurs from the audience, but she commanded their attention with the kind of presence that only comes from years of professional experience. "Well," she said, adjusting her jacket and smoothing her hair as if she'd just finished a perfectly normal interview, "I think that tells you everything you need to know about the real Prince Harry." When faced with legitimate questions about his choices and behavior, instead of engaging in honest dialogue, he throws a tantrum, breaks property, and storms off like a child who didn't get his way. She paused, looking directly into the camera with the kind of steady gaze that would become iconic. "Ladies and gentlemen, what you just witnessed is exactly why this man should never be taken seriously as a spokesperson for mental health, family values, or any kind of social cause. This is who he really is when the cameras are rolling and he can't control the narrative." The audience began to applaud, slowly at first, then building to a thunderous ovation that lasted for nearly a minute. Jennifer Hudson stood there, accepting their approval with the quiet dignity of someone who had just done something that needed to be done, regardless of the consequences. As the show cut to commercial, the studio was already buzzing with the knowledge that they had just witnessed television history. Prince Harry's carefully crafted public image had been completely destroyed in less than an hour, and it had all been captured on live television for the world to see. This wasn't just a bad interview, it was a complete character assassination, and the perpetrator had been Prince Harry himself. The Duke of Sussex had finally shown his true colors, and there would be no coming back from this.